After we, nothing is yet. Okay, thank you. And Evelyn, all of the above. So lots of you are feeling positive, and some of you are feeling anxious, and that's probably the same people, positive and anxious. That's fine. And some of you are confident, some of you are worried. And let's see, a lot of you have new curriculum. Some of you have started focused math classes. A little bit of professional development, more direct instruction, very good. Okay, I inadvertently skipped a step here, so I'm going to step back for a minute and give Jennifer Aldrich, who is supporting our webinar, a chance to just give you an orientation to the room.
For you. Okay, Marion, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, back to our slides. I'm going to assume that you have your handouts, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And we're going to start with Raine Bumatay. She is the administrator over ESL, ABE, and GED at Fresno Adult School. And so, Raine.
Hi, good afternoon. As we spoke, I'm from Fresno Adult School. I am responsible for ESL mainly, as well as assessment, which always gives me a good feel on how effective we're being with implementing curriculum. Do I turn the slide? Or? Yes, okay. Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit about our program. We're right smack dab in the middle of California. Last year, we had about 1,531 ABE students and just a little over 1,000 adult secondary education students, our high school program. You can see we have a really nice facility. We were very lucky to get a brand new facility right in the middle of downtown Fresno, right on a bus line, more than one bus line, so it makes it easy access for anybody that's living within the city. We also have about 41 satellite sites at elementary school, middle schools, and high schools in the area to house all these students. We even have, as you can see here, we even have on the bottom there night classes at a shopping mall. And then we have a GED testing service center. We started that last year, and we're providing all Pearson VUE testing. We plan to become a high-set testing center in March, and we're leaning more towards providing just the paper test for the high-set, and the reason is that that seems to be a small gap still. There are people who still want to take it on paper and are really intimidated by the computerized test, so we're going to implement that at least for a short time with the paper and see if we can't capture some more students in there. You can see that we have ABE and ASE classes going on daily, Monday through Friday. That's our class schedule. So from 8:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night, we're providing classes. One more expansion that we're trying to make is to Saturdays and Sundays. We've been successful expanding our classes for ESL on Saturdays and Sundays, and I'm thinking we can start to increase our numbers in ABE and GED and high school if we start providing Saturday classes. When we talked about what changes we started with, I had to go back. I was a classroom teacher of mathematics until 2010 when I bit the bullet and became an administrator. And then I was moved to the adult school. I didn't know much about adult education, so I needed to get to know my teachers, and I needed to get to know the culture of our school. When it came to the needs of the teachers, the first thing I did was a survey to see their academic needs. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the biggest challenge I had was managing enrollment. Having come as a classroom teacher at the high school level, I was so shocked that there was such a thing as open enrollment when we needed academic achievement. We needed to increase academic achievement. It felt like a really impossible task without managed enrollment. So we managed enrollment, and we'll talk about the effects of that in a minute. And from the needs survey of teachers, it was clear that many of our teachers either were fearful of mathematics or felt like they needed to be brushed up on mathematics. And it wasn't so much the content of mathematics, but maybe expanding their toolbox of approaches in the ways that they were teaching mathematics. So that was the first year that we started to make changes in the program. By 2011, our district had adopted the Common Core state standards, and so across the district we were implementing the Common Core state standards, professional development, and we had the opportunity, we asked the district if our teachers could also be involved in the professional development. So every teacher had about 60 hours of training in Common Core state standards. We learned about complex tests, complex tasks, and how to increase complex talk in the classroom. That was our first focus. And then in 2012, we started departmentalizing instruction. So we didn't have any teachers that taught taught a class of everything, math and science and language arts and social studies. We actually had math classes and language arts classes, and we tried science and social studies classes, but those were not as popular as the language arts and mathematics classes, and that gave the teachers the ability to really focus on the content and teaching the content with various approaches. And then we started also these accountable communities. Some districts I know are calling them professional learning communities, PLs versus ACs. Basically, our primary goals in the first year of having AC groups was to team up the math teachers, the science teachers, the social studies teachers in as many small groups as we could, so that we could first create a curriculum map and all be on a common place as we were teaching. And then our next step was to create common assessments so we could begin to utilize each other as resources. When one teacher did really well on a common assessment, then we could all tap her to determine what I could change in my own class if I hadn't had such a success. By 2013, the survey increased in technology training. Teachers were really wanting technology training, so we used OTAN and Fresno County Office of Education to provide a series of in-services for teachers so that they could learn all about Google Docs and begin to share lesson plans and even grade books and strategies, all utilizing Google Docs. And by 2013, we were comparing common lesson plans amongst the district and publishing our common lesson plans so that we could share them with other teachers in the district, 7th, 8th grade teachers that might have something very much aligned with us. And then in 2014, we continued with accountable communities, and we do that. We're starting to make curriculum map revisions. Many teachers have polished their lessons and perfected their lessons, and more than one teacher is teaching the same lessons, so they're coming up with some favorite lessons, and we've mapped those out and continue to polish and make improvements on the lessons that we're currently teaching in the class. As well as our big challenge this year is going to be to implement the new English language development standards of California, especially literacy skills being embedded in all of our academic areas. So we're really having a focus on making meaning out of what we're teaching and developing the academic language, since we determined that over 50% of our students are EL learners, English language learners. So it helps that we're utilizing those strategies as we go. So back to the survey. When we first did the survey, you can see that the majority, or half of my teachers do have K-12 credentials, and but most of them are multiple subjects majors, and I think all 9 of those people were the ones that said that they were very nervous about teaching mathematics. It was, I think the question was more like which subject would you least want to teach or feel comfortable in teaching? And 11 out of 18 of the teachers said mathematics was their biggest fear. 50% of the teachers wanted professional development and technology as well. And then I think the most important fact to take into consideration was that the majority of teachers, 72% of the teachers, had room to grow on our professional development scale so that they could increase their income utilizing their professional units at the district level. So there was a willingness to pick up classes and to be trained, but they would also like units for it. So what we did was provided 3 units a semester in a math methods course from Fresno Pacific College, and our teachers, the majority of teachers signed up at least the first 2 years. They started dropping off after that, mostly because they were getting to the point where they had, 6 to 9 units already under their belt, and that took them to the next pay level. So it was work they were doing anyway, and it wasn't very difficult. If you have a master's degree, you can usually team up with a local university, and rather than have your teachers going through professional development without getting credit, they could simply create a class for the professional development, and teachers could get credit for a lot of the work that they were already doing. So the first thing we did as far as curriculum goes was we set a common map so that when you walked into our classrooms, for example, in mathematics, the first 2 weeks of school, all teachers were working on the strand of number. They all had a common assessment, a pre-assessment, and a post-test at the end of every 2 weeks so that they could gauge how much learning was going on, but also they could start really honing their instruction to specific areas, and it kept them more focused. And so then you could see that we went through all the strands, but as we looked at the Common Core readiness standards, college and career readiness standards that we received, they had blocked out that the alignment to the new Common Core state standards was had more algebra in it than it did statistics and probability or geometry or numbers. So we actually run 2 sessions of algebra per quarter compared to the other strands to balance out and be aligned with what the test is. And then we repeat that same sequence the second quarter, the third quarter. And then also really focusing in language arts on writing. We had focused a long time on reading, but every teacher was reading a different book, and they weren't really reading complex texts. So we determined that one of the fastest ways to accelerate learning was to focus on writing and the writing process. And so you can see about every 2 weeks, a group of students from each class would submit their essays, 5-paragraph essays. And an ABE1 class's essays were at a very different level of complexity compared to a GED class. But we would get together as teachers and grade those papers according to ABE1, ABE2, ABE3, and then a GED score. So it was a 1, 2, 3, and GED score. And we were finding a lot of students they might be in a GED class for math, but their reading scores were lower, so they might be an ABE2 class for reading. And so we could begin to come up with a common rubric in scoring those writing essays as well. And then finally, the impact of that, first the managed enrollment. You can scroll down and see that even with less students, which the managed enrollment cut our students in half, but it increased the average score that students were getting as far as benchmarks were. So it was very scary to watch the classes get so much smaller. but a positive impact on teachers because you could really see that they were focused and providing feedback regularly to students, and our benchmarks were the highest the year that we managed enrollment. The other problem with unmanaged enrollment, open enrollment, was we were losing many students by the 7th week of school. Our attrition rate was very high, and by the time we managed enrollment, the average student was attending more like 141 days out of 196 days per school year instead of like 35 days out of 196 per school year. So I always kind of say if the teaching is great, they will come. And when we took it very seriously, students took it very seriously. So we saw great improvements in those areas by those small feats. That's all I have to share at this point.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
You're right on time. You're right on our target of 14 minutes each. So I know you have questions for Raine, so write them down and hang on to them because we're going to go on to Evelyn Lenton. Evelyn is the ASE Program Coordinator at Antelope Valley Adult School, and she's going to tell you about what they've been doing there. Evelyn.
All right, thanks, Marian. So Antelope Valley Adult School is located in the northeast corner of Los Angeles County. Geographic region is called the Antelope Valley, and it has more than 500,000 people here. So the two largest cities are Lancaster and Palmdale, with both 150,000 or more residents each. So we have quite a large area, and we are the only adult school. We have our main campus, which is shown here in the picture, and then we have a satellite campus down in Palmdale. Overall, we serve approximately 4,000 students a year in our ESL, CTE, ASE, and ABE programs. Oh, I see that somebody lost the sound. Is that overall, or?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right, sorry. I don't want to talk to an empty room. So, all right, so over 4,000 students a year, and our high school equivalency prep classes serve about 300 students at any given time and about 750 each year. We have 11 HSE prep classes this year that meet 2 times a week for 2 hours each day. All right, we are a Pearson VUE test center, and we will be testing our first HiSET candidates on February 25th, a week from Wednesday. We just finished up all of our paperwork and trial runs yesterday, so we got the official word this morning. So that's exciting news. If the task is ever released in California, we will consider offering that as well. I want to give our students every opportunity to earn their high school equivalency certificate. We were the second test center in California to offer computerized testing for the 2002 exams. Since then, we've tested more than 500 candidates at our test center. And sort of as a way to compare things, back in the 2010-11 school year, we tested 388 candidates on GED paper tests. 115 of those were our current or former students. The test center pass rate was about 70% overall, and our students' pass rate was about 63%. In 2014, last year, we tested 482 candidates at our Pearson VUE Test Center. 55% of those were our former students or current students.
Did we lose you, Evelyn?
The overall pass rate for the test center was around 23%, and the pass rate for our students, though, was at 40%, so I was really happy to see that. GED Testing Service reported a national passing rate of 57%, so we're not quite there. That was last November. And they said that that's still rising, and the pass rate in California they report is 55%. So we have a long ways to go before we are back up to those levels, but I think things are moving in that direction. So far this year, we've tested 87 GED exam candidates, and we also offer all the other exams that Pearson VUE does. And during the first 5 weeks of this year, we've had 9 students who have passed, so that's a good thing. I find that most people put off taking the math subtest until they have passed everything else, which I think could be a bit of a mistake. We've had multiple people take it 2 or 3 times, and even some candidates who wait the 60 days and come back and take it again, and then wait another 60 days and come back again. So they are not passing the math at a very high rate, not just our students, but overall. So to illustrate that, we've tested 509 candidates since January of 2014. 120 of those have passed. Only 30% of the non-passing people have attempted the math test. And so of those only, it's like 8.5% of those who have attempted it have passed. So not very good rates on math. So we need to definitely look at what we can do to improve that. And then also just the last thing on our testing center, anecdotally, I find that the Spanish language examinees are failing their subtests at a much higher rate. And it's not just the math, but across the board. There are more failed subtests in different areas for the Spanish language. So I'm happy to see that some of the publishers are starting to come out with Spanish language prep books. All right, so in the past, when I started teaching GED prep classes back in the early 90s, the instructional model at our school was basically independent study. The teacher sat at a desk at the front of the room, sometimes reading a newspaper or book, and students sat at long rows of tables studying their big GED books on their own. If they had questions, they were told to come to the teacher's desk to ask. So needless to say, that model, while prevalent, was not very successful. My class was the first direct instruction prep class at the school, and seemed to be very successful. And I think that students overall just really hunger for a teacher to take interest in them and their needs. So when I became the program coordinator back in, I think it was 2005-06, first thing I did was change the instructional environment. Some teachers left, others adapted and became excellent teachers. Teacher credentialing, most of the teachers that we have either have the Ryan designated adult ed credential or multiple subject credentials. In the past, it didn't really matter to us what type of credential people had. We just would take anyone interested basically in teaching. So in 2007, we offered distance learning for the first time through, I think it was GED Online through McGraw-Hill, and the OTAN process that you had to go through back then. Technology in the classroom consisted of an overhead projector and transparencies. And computer lab a few years ago, I created a schedule so that our GED prep classes could share the computer lab with our ESL classes, and so our teachers were in a computer lab for 2 times a month for one of their class sessions, so about 4 hours overall for the month. Enrollment at our school has always been an open enrollment model, and students are dropped for lack of attendance if they miss 3 weeks in a row. New students are added to the class every week, and it is very difficult, as Raine pointed out, to be able to teach in that model. So I was glad to hear about the managed enrollment at their school. All right, so where are we today? It'd be nice if I could say this was our brand new building, but it's not. So we still have open enrollment system, but for the first time this year we are maintaining a waiting list, which currently has 127 people on it. Before the waiting list, it was just hit or miss. People called to make appointments. If they got through and got an appointment, great. If they didn't, they were told to try again the following week. So there was no way for them to be assured of moving forward on the waiting list. This school year, I instituted single subject classes in the evenings, and each of those are taught by highly qualified teachers with single subject credentials. The class in highest demand is obviously the math prep class. All of our HSE teachers are hourly as needed. We don't have any full-time teachers in that program. We've recently been told that the district will be audited next year, and our teachers all need to be highly qualified teachers. So we're looking into clarifying that, since according to the Department of Education, Nickelby doesn't apply to adult ed. So I'm not quite sure what the outcome of that audit will be. But we do have difficulties finding qualified hourly teachers to teach daytime classes. I think that's my biggest need. We use single subject books for our high school equivalency classes. We're currently using the McGraw-Hill Contemporaries Common Core Basics and Common Core Achieve books. And in choosing those books, I was really careful to choose a publisher that didn't put a specific test name on the cover. I really wanted our students to be prepared for each of the 3 tests and not think that they needed to take the test that was on the cover of their prep book. This year we started pre-HSE math and pre-HSE writing classes. Those teachers use the Common Core Basics books from McGraw-Hill. A few years ago we also started an ESL HSE transition class for our advanced ESL students. The class is taught in English. Students are allowed to stay in that sheltered class for 1 year before transitioning to regular high school equivalency classes, but we don't do a very good job of tracking those students to see if they actually transition into the traditional classes. This year the class decided to work on their pre-HSE math skills, so that's the transition classes working on math as well. Students in the single subject classes are allowed an automatic transfer to the next subject area once they pass the subtest for the subject in which they're enrolled. So if they're in a social studies class and they pass that, even if there's a waiting list, I will automatically put them into another subject class. This helps a little in having students notify us when they take a test, but more often than not, I have to check the scores after each test session and email the student to let them know that they can transfer. All right, oops, I guess I had already clicked on that. So this is, as far as technology, this is really where we are today. This is a classroom, our HSE classroom, and we do this year have document cameras, you can see it in the corner there, and a computer and projector in each classroom. So that's been a huge improvement in at least getting the teachers some technology that they can use in the students. One of our classrooms is actually in a computer lab and has computers for each student. We have a new distance learning teacher who's certified in distance learning, and we've increased the number of virtual seats in the DL class. Lesson completion has improved significantly this year, primarily because of the new teacher, I think. We hold licenses for both GED Academy and Aztec Software. In my opinion, both of those programs have issues, and so I keep looking for the perfect distance learning program. I think I might be running over time, so I'll try and go quickly. In the future, we plan to offer classes taught in Spanish. We're waiting for the McGraw-Hill Contemporary Companion books to come out in Spanish so that our students can move in either the English or the Spanish realm with the same books. We have potential teachers, but still need to figure out where to hold the classes. I also plan to track English versus Spanish scores of test takers to see where we need to focus our instruction, especially when we start Spanish language prep classes. Technology, we have classroom sets of laptop computers and charging carts on order for the classrooms, and the school is Wi-Fi enabled, so I'm really hoping to get the teachers on board to do more blended learning. And I've been working on a supplemental Moodle course hosted by OTAN to supplement some of the classroom instruction. And other things that I'm hoping to do is maybe institute a free voucher for each of the subject area classes for the GED Ready practice tests, and included in their registration fees, or some way to incentivize students to let us know when they're ready or have decided to take the test. And we would really like to increase our class offerings, but like I said, we have limitations on space and teachers. And then challenges, big challenge is also professional development for hourly teachers, paying teachers for training, finding time when everyone can be together, what we can do with technology-averse teachers. We'd also like to offer classes in outlying communities. We just have such a large geographic area, and so lots of room for growth. So I think that's it. Need to final image of focusing on the students and their needs and achievements is what's driving all of the changes that we make.
Thanks, Evelyn. You've been busy. All of you guys have been busy, but that's a lot, and a lot still to accomplish. We're just going to go on now to Tricia Ouellette, who's the Academic Program Coordinator for Mount Diablo Adult School in Northern California. And Tricia, are you there?
Hello, everybody. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to
You're
take
very, very
okay.
soft.
Am I? Okay, let me see if I can put this up a little bit.
Yeah, can you adjust your mic?
And speak up a little bit more. Is that better?
A little more.
A little more? Okay. Is that better?
Or a lot more.
Okay.
A little more.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. How about you guys? If you could give us a green check by and on your status update, if you can hear Tricia okay now. Still soft. Yes, better. Okay, Tricia, talk.
Okay. I will
seeing
try
green
to
check, so go ahead.
seeing greens here. Okay.
And everyone, you can turn up the volume on your computer as well if you need her to be a little louder. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. No, thank you for having me here today. And also thank you, Marion, for having me go last, because honestly, with the pouring rain here and the Brazilian music, I was almost comatose there for a little bit. So I want to just tell you about our math program here. My name is Tricia Ouellette, and I am the Academic Program Coordinator for Mount Diablo Adult School. And our school is located right there in the East Bay and in Concord, California. And I just put the stats up for our first term here and the registration of our second term. And I did just this year because we've made so many changes that I didn't know if data from previous years would be relevant to what we're talking about. So far this year, and that's starting in September, we've had 193 GED students and 689 high school diploma students. And that's unduplicated count. We are Pearson VUE GED Testing Center. We just started. It took us a while to get up and going, but we are going now, and we hope to be a HiSET testing center later this spring. We have a lot of students asking to take that test. But at this point, we're preparing students for both the Pearson and the HiSET test. I'll apologize now. I don't have the beautiful slides that the others do. I'm kind of a just give me the facts kind of a person here, and it's going to be reflected in my slides, I'm afraid. So recent changes and why we've made these changes. I've been at Mount Diablo Adult School for 2 years, and when I first came here was when our district was just implementing the Common Core standards, and so I looked at those standards, and at that time we had the lab classes where everybody walked in the door, everybody was given a book, told to sit down, be quiet, and let the teacher know if they had any questions. And that's the way a lot of schools have been running, especially because of budgets. But when I looked at those standards, I thought there is no way that our students can be successful with these standards without more instruction. So we changed our structure so that we basically modeled our local community college, where we have math classes for math classes, English classes, social studies classes, science classes. We have Monday, Wednesday classes. We have Tuesday, Thursday classes. We have 9 o'clock classes. We have 11 o'clock classes. We have evening classes, and so students have schedules much like they would if they were going to a community college. And so that was one of the reasons that we changed, is because of the Common Core standards. The other thing is I'm a very data-driven sort of person, and I wasn't happy with our Casey results, our Casey scores. And
Tricia,
when we were,
this
go
is
ahead.
Marion. I'm just going to interrupt you for a minute and ask the other
Sure.
presenters to mute their mics because we're getting a little background noise. So just click on your microphone icon up at the top and that will mute you, and remember to turn it back on when we get to the Q&A. Okay, Tricia, thank you. Go ahead.
Certainly. And so I wasn't very happy with our Casey data. When we were in the first year I was here, we were still in the lab type of setting, and we tried pullouts for math, and said, okay, in this room we're doing slope and coordinate planes, and in this room, this week we're doing fractions, and in this room we're doing, something else. And what I found is everybody headed to the lowest math level. And what it came to be is students just didn't really know what they needed. They didn't know where they were on the spectrum. They didn't know what they needed for the test. And then the other thing I found is that teachers tended to go back to teaching the lowest topics. And so that's why our students weren't passing the Casey, is because everybody was in this mode where they were all just focusing on very basic math. The new GED test also presented us with a lot more problems, because it is, as you know, much more rigorous in the math. And again, if everybody's just hanging out in the basic math class, they're not going to pass that. So those were the reasons why we looked at our program and said, what do we need to do, and what do we need, how do we need to make these changes? The other reason, my director, Joanne Durkee, is very involved with the AB 86 at the state level. So as you can guess, transitioning to post-secondary institutions is very much on my radar. And also our district has increased our graduation requirement. They've increased it by 10 this year for electives, and they're going to increase it another 10 next year, and that's going to be in math. And so looking at the fact that I was unhappy with our Casey data, that my math students didn't seem to be progressing fast enough, that I knew that they were going over to the community college and getting stuck in the remedial classes, and possibly wasting their student loan money or Pell Grant money for remedial classes, and then knowing that this new graduation requirement coming up has made us really just look at our math program. And so, like I said, we've changed it so that we've hired math teachers. I have a wonderful morning math teacher and a wonderful evening math teacher. Math teachers are really hard to find, especially really good math teachers. That's what I found. We do direct instruction classes in all of our classes now, but I found this to be particularly helpful in the math classes. We have 3 different levels of math. We have a basic math class, we have pre-algebra, and algebra. And of course, the next year, we're in the process now of looking at how we're going to do next year, because of the increased graduation requirement of another 10 units of math. And through the AB 86 process, we just had a meeting last week with our community college in our area, and looked at the math curriculum for the 120 class, which is the one that is just below transferable, and actually saw that it has a lot of Algebra 2 in it, and that geometry is not actually required at the community college level. And so now we've kind of taken a step back, and that was and looked at it, and we're looking at more of an integrated math approach, and possibly pulling topics from Algebra 2 and Geometry, and then perhaps calling it a college and career readiness math class, because I think if I put Algebra 2 down, students would have a heart attack. And so looking at that, and my hope is that that will help them to transition to post-secondary and be more successful when they got there. The other changes we've made at our school, we've done quite a bit of Common Core standards professional development through our district. We've tried to take advantage of all of our district PD meetings. Even though we're following more the college and career readiness standards, we just attended a wonderful college and career readiness training workshop through CALPRO. Unfortunately, I was in the English part, and my partner was in the math part, and then my partner was our vice principal, and she went to a different school. So I need to attend that training again, Marion, okay, under the math one. And then, like I said, the meetings with the local community college have just been wonderful and been very helpful. The challenges have been, to just reiterate what both Evelyn and Raine have said, managed enrollment. You know, you try to do managed enrollment, and with students coming in all the time, it's really difficult for the math classes. And what I found is that the students that started at the beginning are the ones that are persisting. But as a coordinator, I find the need to make sure my classes are full all the time, because probably from the last, a few years when we've had budget cuts after budget cuts, and classes closed because they were too small, I'm very sensitive to making sure that classes are full all the time, and then also too that not everybody comes to us in September, and so I want to help students if they want to be graduates. I want to get them into the classes as soon as possible. So we've basically been doing registration once a month and tried to make that work, and I think that's been doing better. But I think it has helped us a great deal. I also wanted to caution you, if you are looking for math teachers, finding the right math teacher. I had a situation where I hired a college professor, and she was just well over their heads and couldn't even seem to come to the point where she could connect with the students. So I have a wonderful teacher now. She does a lot of scaffolding, and I think that's been key to the success with her in the morning with my morning students. My evening students seem to be a little bit higher level, but my morning students really need a lot more of that scaffolding. Another challenge that I'm finding is that the KC test does not match the Common Core standards. So when I'm telling my teachers to teach the Common Core standards, we still have to kind of go and whatever else is on the KC, because the point was with the Common Core standards was to limit the focus, and yet we still need to teach everything that's on that test. And so we're still kind of struggling with how best to do that. And then, it still drives me crazy that they can't use a calculator on the KC, because honestly, our telephones, cell phones have calculators. And so I'm looking for the day when the KC, you can use a calculator and the focus is on problem solving and critical thinking and not on these little processes of long division. And so it bothers me that we're spending, so much time teaching students how to do long division when they could really pull out their cell phone and spending time on that instead of more critical thinking, problem solving. So I was happy to see the new GED test had, just a few questions where you needed the calculator, but the rest of it was focused on more rigorous concepts. Other challenges, and I'm sorry, Mary and I forgot to look at the time when I started, so if you need to cut me off, do so at any time. Curriculum and textbook.
You got a minute.
A minute. Okay, I'm going. The curriculum and textbooks have been a heartache for me. I still have not found a math book that I'm madly in love with. I do like the new GED books. We've been using some GED books in just our math class. I'm still looking for the math books that have the scaffolding, that have enough problems to make it so that the students feel comfortable and confident that they've got the skill, but I'm pretty much against the drill and drill and kill concept, because we have so much to learn. We don't have students for a whole year, and so we're trying to teach them as much as we can in a short amount of time. GED test results. We've just started up. And so because we really don't have that data, I'm not really able to give you the answer to that question yet. But we are trying to help students to pass the CASE, the GED, and then the Accuplacer. That's on our radar too, so that we can help these students transition to post-secondary and not be stuck in the remedial classes forever. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tricia, and thank all of you. We are to the point now where we can take your questions. I'm going to switch our layout to our question and answer layout. So if you have questions for a specific presenter, put them in the first box. If you have questions that you just want everybody or anybody to answer, put them in the second box and go right ahead. We have about 10 minutes to do this.
Marion, is it okay to answer when we see a question
Yes,
come up?
go ahead and answer as you're reading, yes.
Okay. Full-time teachers, I have one, but I'm hoping to get more. I'm hoping with the education, it looks like is getting better, and that our budgets are coming back, and if that's the case, I hope that we will be having more, but at this time, I only have one full-time teacher.
Fresno Adult School, we have 6 full-time teachers in the ASE program.
Great, thank you. So Steve, I think your question got answered also. Jamie's asking, what has been your experience with online prep? How do your students use online resources? So who wants to start that one?
Let me
throw in
answer.
my 2 cents. Okay, go ahead.
Who was that, Tricia or Evelyn?
I think it was Tricia, but I think I talked over somebody.
Tricia, go ahead. Tricia, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, we use blended classes in all of our high school diploma classes, but what I have found with the math classes is that students tell me I need to be in a class with a teacher. So I haven't had a lot of experience. My math teacher uses online websites in her class, but the students that I've had just take Cyber High or just take Odyssey without the blended instruction from the classrooms have not been as successful. So I hope that answers that.
And Raine, did you want to answer that?
I got Leila's problem. Is that which one you're talking about? I just answered. I typed
no,
hers in.
Or maybe it was Evelyn about online prep.
Oh, yeah.
Evelyn, did you want to answer that? Evelyn, did we lose you? Okay, I'm going to...
Let me answer Scott's question there. He was asking what curriculum, both in print and online, do we use in our GED classes. The curriculum that we're using book-wise is Steck Vaughn, but the teachers find themselves supplementing a lot with units that we're getting from New York Common Core State Standards website or our own Common Core State Standards website. So they're doing a lot of supplementing with both. And the online we piloted GED Academy for about a year, but we noticed that it can't be a standalone class at all.
Okay. Can you hear me, Marion?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't know. I must have muted my microphone. This is Evelyn. On the online issue, we find that we have different students' needs. Those that can't come to class and are more self-directed are doing great in the online. And I'm hoping that once we get the laptops in the classrooms that we'll be able to use more of a blended environment.
And Evelyn, while you're talking, Catherine is asking what are the fees you charge, and is the distance learning on the computer? What are the practice programs you are using? Tech and what?
Okay, so we charge a $30 registration fee that's good for the entire year unless the students dropped for lack of attendance, and if they want it to come back they have to pay it again. They can use that same fee to move between a distance learning versus a face-to-face class. This is distance learning on the computer. Yes. We use Aztec software right now. We started out with GED Academy, but I wasn't real thrilled with the avatars. I hear they're going to be changing that. We used to use the McGraw-Hill online program. I'm hoping they'll come out with another one. And I think that answers the question.
Thanks. I'm going to go over here to questions for all. In Merced Adult School, we have a community of practice on math instructional strategies. I don't know if you've taken advantage of that. There's also a self-directed online course on that topic. And it's not specifically targeted to the new GED. So I hear your request, and I will put it in the hopper. Renee, how are your students prepping for the computer-based testing environment? Do you supplement the book instruction with an online component? So you had some answer to that in the presentations. Evelyn was saying they go to the computer lab a certain amount of time, but anybody want to add anything to that about the tech requirements for the GED?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I was answering somebody else's.
Okay. How are you prepping your students for the online, taking the test online?
That's a tough one. Most of our students seem to be pretty well acquainted with computers, but we hopefully, once we have our laptops in the classrooms, they'll be a lot more ready to use them.
Thanks.
Raine
or
or this is
Tricia?
Tricia. Yeah. Can you hear me, Marion? I had to turn it down because
Yes.
it was too loud. One of the things that my teachers feel is key is teaching them how to use the calculator. It's a little bit different than the old GED calculator. And so we bought a bunch of the calculators that match what's on the test so that students can practice using the calculator in class.
Yeah, we did the same thing. Plus the test center, we let them use those same calculators.
Thanks. And Tricia, I see you have a link for the AccuPlacer test. I don't know if you have it accessible, but you can put it in the chat if you do have it. Marjorie, how do you give directed teaching lessons to a class with various levels of basic math knowledge? Good question. How do you level your math classes? Raine, do you want to speak to
I
that?
think one of the most effective strategies is sticking to those strands of mathematics. And the reason I say that is because each strand of mathematics has specific types of questions, specific tools, and specific answers. And for example, in geometry, you know, the question might be, how tall is the door? Well, I could measure that with my thumb. I could measure that with a 12-inch ruler. I could measure that with the yardstick. And then the way my answer would look would be an inches sign or a square foot sign. And so I want the students to get very used to the strands of mathematics so that when they're working individually or on their own, they can ask for help successfully. So we really focus on getting students to be able to articulate where their strengths and weaknesses are by teaching them in strands. So we spend 2 weeks on each strand, 2 weeks on geometry, 2 weeks on number, 2 weeks on statistics and probability, and then 4 weeks on algebra. So that way, even within the class, there's in each of those strands, you're going to have levels of instruction, but students are able to articulate better where their weaknesses and strengths are.
Thank you. I'm going to go on to Layla. Are the HiSET and GED prep math classes the same, or do you have different classes for the two tests? Is that
We're keeping everything the same.
We're keeping everything the same as well.
Okay.
I don't want our students to think that they have to that they're pigeonholed into one test because they're prepped for that only test.
Jamie's asking if anyone's using GED online.
Do you mean the old GED online for McGraw-Hill?
Okay, we'll wait for Jamie to come back with that. I'm going to Scott. How do you help new students to improve typing skills they will need on the GED for the extended response questions?
I was just typing a response to him on that. Do you want me to answer that, Marion?
Sure, go ahead.
So Hunt and Peck typists are being successful on the extended response portions of the GED exam. There really is not a set typing speed that they need to have. They just need to know basically where the keys are on the keyboard. There's lots of free resources out there on typing and improving your typing skills. And if I can put a plug in for OTAN, I'm going to be doing a technical skills for online testing or computer-based testing training next month, I think.
Yes, excellent. Look for that because Evelyn's done a lot of looking into how to get people up to speed technically for the course. Lori's asking, I think, Tricia, how are you going to use the AccuPlacer? How does that going to fit into your curriculum?
Okay. I was just getting ready to type the answer for. Basically, this is for just our higher level students because the AccuPlacer does have Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 on it. And the AccuPlacer, in case you missed my note over there, is the pre-assessment test for the community colleges. I believe it's throughout California, but I know it is at least our community college. That's the test. They have to take a reading AccuPlacer test and a math AccuPlacer test. And I put the link to the practice test in the first column. And what we do is for our students that tell us that yes, they are going on to the community college and they're already showing algebra skills and working at a higher level, we have them take that practice AccuPlacer test to see what holes they have. And again, as we move into this next year where we have the higher level math, because right now the highest level we have is Algebra 1. And so we will be using the AccuPlacer to help us with our new class and our new math requirements so that, again, we can try to help the students do the best they can on the AccuPlacer so that they can get into higher level math classes over at the community college.
And Tricia, Catherine has a question. I think you answered part of it. The transitions to non-remedial classes are from GED, or are your math classes are for everything, GED, KC, and high school?
Our math classes, the students in our math class, they might be there because they're trying to get high school credits. They may be there because they're trying to pass that KC, or they may be in there because they're trying to pass the GED. Basically, I think the GED is more difficult than the KC, so when we're teaching to the GED, I think that incorporates everything from the KC. So when I was talking about transitions to non-remedial, what I was talking about is when our students get a high school diploma and they pass the KC here, because we only go as high as Algebra 1, what happens is then they go over to the community college, they take the AccuPlacer, which is where their assessment, the community college's assessment test, and that determines where they place students. And what I don't want to happen is I don't want my students to go over there and then end up in classes that are well below transferable, so that they're spending their money on classes that are not going to transfer or count as college credit. And that's what I meant by transferring to remedial classes.
Thanks. I'm just going to take one more because we're going a little bit over our time, but Layla's asking, most of her students want to take the GED because they've heard of it. Are you having the problem, any of you that are doing high set or planning to do high set, of students not wanting to take the high set?
I have a lot of students that want to take the high set. The teachers are really pushing it, telling them that it's probably going to be easier for the next year than the GED, and so we have a lot of people trying to take high set.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, I go into the classrooms and talk to the students and let them know that there is nothing on the high school equivalency certificate from the state that says what tests they took.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm going to go back to our slides for a minute. That was a great discussion, and I'm sure we could go on and on. But if you missed something or missed one of the links that was in the chat, the recording will be posted in a few days, and I will send out the link to everybody that's on the list. I want to encourage you, one of the things in your handout is about the electronic community of practice from CALPRO. This is an area, basically an online community, where you can go and continue these discussions if you would like. There already are discussions on there about high school issues like this that we're just discussing right now, and the instructions for joining that community are in your handout. Also, the training that Tricia mentioned, the CalPro Communities of Practice training, is now available. The first module of it is available, and it's going to be offered twice this year. Once in Poway, which is near San Diego, so that's the Southern California location. And there's two options, I think, in Pittsburgh, a morning one and an evening one. So those are on the CalPro event calendar if you go to the CalPro website. Okay, somebody's trying to get the handout, so I can't move slides. And I want to thank you very much for your participation. If you missed anything or need anything or didn't get the handout, just email me. I'm going to close the meeting, and when it closes, the evaluation is going to open up in a separate window. So kind of look behind this window or look around in your browser for the evaluation, because we really appreciate your feedback and we would appreciate you filling that out. Thank you, Raine, Evelyn, and Tricia, and thank all of you for your commitment and spending part of your Friday afternoon with us, and have a great weekend.